Okay, we're going to do a little bit on the histogram so that we understand that. The histogram is merely a map of where your pixels are. So let's take a look at the histogram for this image. I am going to go to Adjustments and Levels, and that's probably the clearest histogram we have. Now, if you look at the histogram, right in this area, you have the dark triangle, this is the mid-range triangle, and this is the white triangle. All right, so when you look at the pixels here, notice that this image is mostly mid-tones to dark. We've got just a little bit of white along the very edge here that's almost white. Down here, it's almost white. Here, there's just a tiny bit of white. That white highlight on the egg there, those are the only white specks aside from that tiny little bit on the nose there. So it's very, very predictable that this histogram right here would be tilted towards the dark or towards the left. All of the pixels, and this is the amount of pixels given the height of the mountain in the histogram, and this is the range of pixels down here from side to side, from the white triangle to the black triangle. So this is heavily weighted towards the darks, okay? Let's click cancel and take a look at a different picture. I'm going to go to this flower. That should be quite a different histogram. So if I go back to levels and look at this one, it has darks because we have all these dark tones right in the center, but it's got an awful lot more mid-range pixels, sorry. And then we don't have anything that's pure white in here. If you look on this whole thing, there isn't a pure white. So what's happening here is we're not using the full tonal range. If we come down to right where the pixels start, right here, there's just a tiny bit of white. Those are probably those little tiny white specks in here, the pollen specks. So I don't care if we blast those out. So I'm going to come back to where they start to really become white. We're starting to get some whites in the ends, the little tips here of the flower. And that way I'm using a more complete tonal range. It's going to spread that out. I'm going to click OK and show you. We go back to the same histogram now that it's been corrected and see how the histogram is going all the way from one side to the other. We've got the dark pixels in here they are really going to the end over here. Let's see if I can get this to do this. I can't get it to zoom in right now, but right here you can see there's a little line. There's just a few really totally black pixels. Everything else is really, really dark. These are your mid-tones. Those would be more like these reds in here. The dark pinks, sorry. These dark pinks would be your mid-tones. Then you've got a lot of stuff up here that's very light. These would be your very light pinks in here and some of those yellows. So that's how the histogram looks for this image. And then let me go and pick out another image really, really quickly. I'm going to go down and see what we have. Okay, let's take this one and look at this one. We've got a full tonal range here. We've got blacks all the way to white. Let's take a look at how they lay out right here. Now, notice we've got a big, huge spike here at the end. Those are all the whites in the background. We don't need any detail on those. That's just background color. So I don't mind a bit that it's really kind of bumping up against the right-hand side of the histogram. Everything else, you've got a little bump here in the middle for the midtones here, and just a little bit of black there. If I wanted to make sure that I had a pure black, which I'm not sure in this case I really want. I think dark grays in this case are pretty copacetic. But you notice we've got the bump in the middle here that shows a good pile of middle range pixels. And then we've got the darker range, which would be this range right in here. And then these little guys here, those deep shadows, those would be the ones that are kind of petering out towards the end there. So usually you don't want, if you've got like a pure scenery where you don't have a white background, you probably don't want everything squashed up against the white end of the histogram or the light end of the histogram. And also, if you have a dark image, you don't want everything squashed up against that wall of black. So you want to kind of spread those out, and so you're not clipping anything, which means if I take this here and move this into the histogram, what happens is, see what happens there? I'm losing all the detail in there. Everything that's lighter than 204 on the brightness level has gone completely white. And this area here, areas in here have all gone completely white and have no detail. We don't want that. Same thing here on the blacks. If I bring it way in here, I've lost all the detail in my deep grays here, in my stem, in this area of the flower, because we've clipped everything that is 110 on the brightness scale, between 0 and 255. Everything 110 and darker has gone completely black. I have clipped those blacks, and we don't want that either. So that is what a histogram is. So that's the input levels. That's what's already existing in your image. Now, say I printed this and all of these stems went black because of the way my printer profile was set up, or my printer just didn't have that capability. I could tell it, don't put so many blacks in there. Don't kind of bring all your blacks right to this end. I can tell it, don't leave me those blacks a little bit more detailed, so I could bring this up to 10, 15, and that would soften those blacks or lighten them up just a little bit so we'd retain the detail in those blacks. Output levels, it's for output, what you see, what you're printing. Same thing here. If I don't want those whites to be completely stark white, see how they're coming down just a little bit? That's completely white. This is not. Let me come in here and just give you a sample of that. I'm going to make a selection in here of the complete white, and then I'm going to inverse a selection, Command or Control Shift I, inverses a selection, back up to Image, Adjustments and Levels. And now if I tell it I don't want white to be super white, you can see how quickly it gets dark as I go down and drop those whites into another zone, or, drop them down into a light gray. It doesn't take much. If I go to, there's a difference even with just 2 points right there. If I deselect, you can see it right in here. There is a difference even with just those 2 points. So that is the histogram. Input and output levels. You can control what goes out as well as control what you're seeing and correct it, what is incoming. You have the histogram in the levels. You have it in curves right there. You see the histogram here. That's the same exact histogram. It's just a little more faded and squashed, but you have the darks at this end, the lights at this end, right there, and these are whether you're darkening or brightening. So if I pull down on this, I'm darkening the darks. If I pull up at this end, I'm lightening the lights. So you see, I can control by how much I pull it away from that center diagonal, which is where we start, and just small tweaks. And usually you want it to be an S-curve. If you go the other way, what you're doing is fading your blacks and darkening your lights so it gives it a flat appearance. See how there aren't any like highlights in it anymore except for the white background. That's this point right here. It's holding the whites because I haven't moved that. If I bring that down, then I'm fading the white background as well. So if you want to hold your whites, you keep that point right at the top. If you want to hold your blacks, you keep that point right at the bottom. But again, you can say, I don't want there to be a pure black in there. And right there, we have no more pure blacks. Let's go down and bring those back. And you still have that same histogram. Just to go over it here, because I haven't done that in a while, this is your black eyedropper. So anything I click on with the black eyedropper is going to set the black point. So if I click here, for instance, anything that brightness level or darker becomes completely black. You see what happened to the histogram right here. The blue line stops right here. All that stuff here in the histogram just became completely black. I'm going to reset this by holding down my Option or Alt key. Then I get the reset button. If I click on the white eyedropper and click on the white anywhere, what I perceive to be white, right here nothing happens because that is white. But if I click in here, anything that color or lighter becomes completely white. And you see right up here, that's what's happening with our histogram. We've got a flat line. Everything from here on over becomes completely white. So histogram can be used to control your whites and blacks. It can be used to control your contrast as well in the channel, in the curves dialog box. This guy right here, the middle one, is neutral gray, middle gray here. So this will, if you have something that is neutral, that this is all black and white, but if I were to come in to this one, let me do this one and say I want to go into curves again. And I'm doing this on the layer just for demo purposes. It's more ideal, if possible, to do it as an adjustment layer because it's non-destructive. I'm just demoing here. You see the different histogram here again, the same one we saw in levels. If I come in here and click on the black eyedropper, everything darker than that pixel just became pure black. So everything from here on out, we don't have the numbers at this point, became pure black. Again, I'm going to reset that. And then if I click on something that I think should be white, like the little point here, anything that is lighter than that, let me do it with the white eyedropper, will all become pure white. So we've got this all, everything brighter than that right there, that entire sector just became bright white. So that is a little description of histograms as it applies to curves and levels. And one last thing, just to remind you, we do have auto adjustments here. So if you want to try that and give that a whirl, we've got auto tone right here. And it looks at it and to the best of its computerized ability gives us a little toning on the image. That's just kind of an overall adjustment. And then if we go back to auto contrast, it will look at it and decide, let me go back to something like that and see what it does with that. Adjustments, auto contrast. Right there, it kicked up the contrast a little bit. That made the lights lighter and darkened any places that weren't as dark as they should be. And let's look at the sky image right here. Let's look at what it does to that. Auto color. And it's kind of looking at it and deciding where it should go from there. So you can try those adjustments and see how they work for you. Let's do auto color here. And it does kind of neutralize the whites in this quite a bit and the blacks as well. So it's a nice start. You can start there and then do your customized adjustments as well. So you might look into the auto features as well with Photoshop. But that is my little spiel on adjustments and using the histogram with them, and I hope that helps. And one last little bit about histograms is if you have one of the little bit better than consumer level cameras, you may see histograms in your information on the back of your camera as well. Just remember, that's telling you where your pixels are located and also giving you a hint as to whether you're clipping your whites or clipping your blacks. And that's important information to know. If you're clipping your whites, you may want to decrease your exposure. If you're clipping your blacks and not your whites, you may want to increase exposure because it means that too many things are going totally black, you're blocking your blacks up, or that your whites, if everything's tipped towards the white end and you're bumping against that right wall, you may want to decrease your exposure because things have gotten too white and you're clipping your whites or losing detail in your whites. And that's it about histograms.